Have you heard of the Yamoussoukro decision?
What's that?
Is that a motorbike?
Yamoussoukro, it should be.
Yeah.
It's got a bun as
Got a
much
motorbike
Japanese
sound
in
to
it,
it.
and it's an African thing. Oh, come on, you guys are aviators, really?
Yamaso
Yeah, what? Yeah,
Yamoussoukro.
hold on. Yamoussoukro decision. It's a treaty to open up the African skies
Okay.
completely, which is cool. 44 countries already signed up for it.
Okay.
That's fantastic.
Cool.
Well, that actually goes in line with. We had a meeting earlier in the week, and it was decided that I was going to pick up any negative news, job losses, airline closures, things like that. Ryan, you were going to pick up all the positive stuff. What did you come up with?
Well, yeah, I totally abandoned any negative news. There's too much of it this week. Unfortunately, not a lot of positive stuff coming through either.
I found a crap load of positive stuff.
Yeah, but is it like flying related?
Yes.
Or is it all this business guy tech
Business
stuff
guy
that goes
tech
over
is,
my head kind of?
you know you're gonna love it eventually. Just accept it. You're gonna love it eventually.
No, well, we'll learn to.
Well, I found some brilliant one. IATA's released information on Africa now. On post-COVID, the growth rate. They're estimating about a 5.4% growth.
In Africa.
Year on year in Africa, which is going to triple the economy in over the next 20 years. The numbers are staggering. I looked at how the hell are these guys getting it right? Where they're coming up with it. But they're obviously looking at post this, that it's one of the biggest, besides Asia, the biggest growth areas in the world, which is seriously positive.
I think it's plausible. I mean, when we were talking about it last week, when you see sort of relatively how unaffected the African airlines are, I mean, there's not that many of them that are shutting down, whereas Europe, Asia,
it's the
America,
size of the airline.
Yeah.
You got an Emirates, how many? 115 A380s. That's mad.
Yeah.
That's absolutely crazy. As opposed to an airline who's got 12 ERJs or 20 737s. I mean, it's more likely they're going to recover.
I think not saying you don't always, we don't always believe the news, but you read stuff and I mean, I even I read an article yesterday. Africa, it was talking about how much it is actually battling, and we've always reported that from what we can see and the airlines that we deal with, they're all still there and they're all still optimistic about the future. So I don't know, guys, the news articles and what we're seeing, Africa still seems okay. I spoke to a friend of mine yesterday, was asking if he's going to pay to do a rating or something now, what do you do? It's an obvious answer for me. You come and do an ERJ rating. There's ERJs flocking into Africa.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount. Listen, I made a joke at the beginning by saying, go pick up all the positive news, because let's face it, this week, 800 pilots from Emirates.
Yeah, brings the total to about 1,500 so far.
Okay, 1,500. There's guys coming back from Japan. Air Asia looks a bit rocky, or I don't even know if they've gone to the next level. There was also a report by IATA that came out. I don't know if you guys saw it. It was they did a survey at the beginning of the pandemic about air travel, whether or not people were keen to jump on an aircraft, and 60% of mainly US carriers, 60% of the people were ready and willing to fly. That number's now dropped to 40%. So people are actually less willing to fly at the moment, but a little bit hand in hand with, I think there's more knowledge of the virus now. It went into, what can airlines do to improve that figure. There are certain things, again, goes back to leaving the middle seat open, screening at the airport, not temperature screening, because it's a little bit Mickey Mouse, let's face it. And but can you test thousands of people inside an airport is also not particularly feasible. These tests as well, some places it takes 3 or 4 days to get the results back. Some places it takes 2 hours to get the results back.
And a lot of places have false negative, false
negative,
positive.
false positive.
I mean, it's
particularly we've seen that already. A lot of guys testing positive go get tested again the next day and they're negative. So this is still this IATA survey, and IATA have been very, very pro trying to get people back into the air. They're not trying to be negative. They are just trying to sort of impart the fears of the passengers, and quite an interesting thing. But the reality is, the numbers, the people are less keen to travel right now than they were 2 months ago.
I don't know if that's also maybe just people being scared in general of the virus, or if they're scared of the whole fact that you go somewhere and you're going to end up in a 14-day quarantine until the world's borders are open again. I think that's going to alleviate most of the fears. I mean, imagine going somewhere now, getting stuck like our Nigerian friends. In my opinion, I think that's what people are more scared of.
I agree with you. That's what I would be scared of.
Yeah,
I would be scared of being away from my friends and family in another country. Exactly. While I wait out the quarantine. And remember, then you've still got to test negative at the end of all of that before you can actually So it's not a.
I think a lot of people are realizing that all of the things they're putting in place, the masks and the testing and all of that, it's all rubbish. It's there to make people feel more comfortable. That is it. We all know that wearing a mask, if you have a look at the right information, it can't stop the virus. They're saying the virus is now suddenly airborne. How does it become suddenly airborne? I think they are also getting to the people are waking up to the reality to this, that there's a good chance you're going to get it. Hopefully the wrong people don't get it. Hopefully those who are strong enough can survive it. And we know, look, I mean, the mortality rate is only 2%, if that high, worldwide.
Yeah, you're right. But if you read the articles properly, masks, wearing a mask, it may help prevent you from passing it on, and it may help in a small way prevent you from actually catching it. It's certainly not a 100% barrier.
No, it's by no means guaranteed.
Nor is the normal washing of your hands and things like that. But I think this is where this IATA survey came from, to say what can the airlines do to actually sort of mitigate those fears for the potential passengers.
And that's important. I think that's critically important, that anyone wanting to fly understands that, hold on, they're doing their best. And I think doing the best is all we can ever hope for.
Well, I think in South Africa we're doing really well. I mean, reading this article and listening to some of the what the American carriers had to say, I mean, it's not mandatory to wear a mask on an American airline at this stage.
Yeah.
There's no law, so they've left it up to the airlines to actually make the call and to implement these the screenings and the wearing of masks.
But countries are doing that. I mean, France, you don't have to wear a mask. I was just chatting to some colleagues in Paris 2 days ago. Masks they wear them in the office purely for client comfort. But out in the streets, you don't have to wear a mask anymore.
But if there's a call to say, listen, people are more comfortable if everyone is wearing a mask, then I say let's all wear masks on the plane, because if it's going to improve the ticket sales and improve the passenger comfort and eliminate those fears, then by all means let's wear a mask. It all goes into what is best for the aviation industry.
I think by and large, the over-the-top approach has worked for South Africa. We're only starting to sort of hit our peak of this virus, the numbers now, which is nowhere near as high as it was in France and Italy and Spain and all that.
Yeah.
So whatever our government has instituted is working. There's some things that I think that they should relax. But definitely, if it means wearing a mask to keep people safe, or at least feel safe, then by all means,
We've reported week to week the SAFE numbers, and their load factors are not bad. So maybe those sort of extra measures that the South African government has taken has actually sort of eliminated the fears of the potential passengers, and that's why people are traveling. So we stick with that. We're happy with that. It's just interesting to see worldwide the numbers are actually falling. That the people willing to travel actually falling, which is a bit.
I find it's interesting if you look at some of the forecasts. So obviously your larger corporates are looking at the future. There's never from a business perspective, never a short-term view. You don't look at you have projections for the next 12 months, but your forecast is always 10, 15 years down the line for the larger corporates. So Airbus is, we spoke about it last week, expecting 15,000 retrenchments. But at the same time, they're estimating another 25,000 aircraft needed over the next decade. That is a hell of a lot of aircraft. So they're obviously looking at a recovery. I mean, the airline industry worldwide is potentially one of the biggest, definitely top 10, somewhere along there. But they're looking at it and they understand that we are going to recover. We are going to move on from this, and it's going to be one of those things, in the distant past, eventually.
I have no doubt that there will be a recovery. I think the uncertainty arises from when. Is it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now? And how do the majority of guys that were involved in aviation that have sort of been sacked get from now until then? How do we join those dots?
How do you bridge that gap? Yeah. We actually sat early in the week to plan the show, and we made a commitment that we want to sit here, we want to broadcast not just positive news, but broadcast positivity. Positive news is one thing, anyone can feed off that, but it's another thing to actually be positive and to actually have a strong sort of motivational mindset that hopefully the listeners actually can take on and say, we need to be more positive ourselves. And it was quite difficult sitting here and saying, right, what are we going to talk about today? What news should we pick up on? What sort of avenue should we go down? And the discussion on its own we ended up talking about our journey in doing this. And I suppose there's a hell of a lot of people out there that have gone off and started their own, whether it's a platform like this or a business or started working at a new place or trying to start something new. All these little hurdles that we've had to climb over, everyone is having that same thing. If we battle to find topics to talk about today, it's similar to a new business owner trying to find people to sell his new product to tomorrow. It's ultimately the same thing. But it's quite an interesting story. It's quite, I wouldn't say it's not easy to come up with an idea for a new business or an idea for a podcast or a new plan or platform, whatever it might be. The difficulty is actually continuing with it and continuing with it with a lot of energy and positivity, because it's very easy once you start something to say, okay, wow, this is actually too much. I've maybe bitten off more than I can chew. Let me go back into my shell. It's so important to say, no, that's not how it's going to work anymore. We're going to keep pushing forward regardless. And I suppose, Ryan, I'd done a few podcasts before. I brought you into it, and the difficulties that, even to where we are now, the comfort today, if you compare it to the comfort 2 months ago, has increased dramatically. And I suppose that goes for any person starting something new. If you start something new, you're going to come up with all these little hurdles that you never thought about, but you're also going to come up with all these little good things that you never thought about. We spoke about it, Brett, after the show. We said, we even spoke about why don't we actually, we could push out 2 shows a day if we had to. And then we said, but after the show there's a bit of a adrenaline drop. You get ready to talk, and you're keen, and you want to get your point across. And as soon as it ends, there's this sort of adrenaline drop. And now if you must pick yourself up for another show, that's a bit difficult.
Right. Yeah.
You've got to almost stay in that state of mind continuously. So when you are on the show like we are here, or running your business as you are, you've got to almost stay in that mindset, that absolute will to not only survive but to thrive in this era, and it's that alone, I would say, and I'm sure you guys will agree, if nothing else comes of this, for us has been vitally important.
Absolutely. I said it again.
Absolutely. Yeah, beers on you. Okay, no beers because it's Friday.
You're not allowed beers.
Okay,
so
well,
yeah.
lunch at least.
Yeah.
But to sum it up, what I think you're saying there, Brian, is to be positive and proactive. And you're quite right. I mean, for me, just going through the last 2 months doing this with you guys, it's been fantastic. It's given me a lot of confidence. I'm learning more and more each day, about certain things that I can and cannot do, and also exceeding my own sort of envelope and barrier of limitations, which is exciting. It's pushing me in a completely new direction coming from when I felt like my back was up against the wall. And definitely want to encourage the rest of the guys out there to go out and do the same.
Something I heard is, what is absurd is facing an absurd situation with a normal response, which you can't do in the situation. You've got to do something completely different. We've gone through a hell of a lot here. We've learned how to mix video, detach sound, test microphones,
fiddle with lights
that don't pink.
Well,
Maybe you still look pink.
Hopefully we don't look as pink
as last week
today.
Well, I look more pink than
Ryan looked like last week. It looked like you had flattened a bottle of whiskey before you actually arrived.
The bottle of whiskey had nothing to do with it before we arrived.
But we joke about it. But these are all things that are absolutely real. What color is the light that's supposed to be shining on you? What settings are you supposed to use for the microphone? Okay, we're using a podcast as an example here, but it goes for anything. Any business, anything you start, you're going to come up with all these little things that you never thought, I wonder how that works. But you're only going to know that if you go off and start something and actually try it. There's nothing like taking action. Just take some pure, absolute, dedicated action, and you'll actually find you find your way with it. I mean, we decided this week to make a little video, a promo video for YouTube. How much fun did we have doing that?
That was awesome. I realized I'm actually a very good actor.
Brett, what do you have to say about that?
We'll ignore Ryan's comment and let's move on to the fact that it was a brilliant video, despite Ryan's brilliant acting.
Brilliant actors.
but the point
I
being,
do want to just highlight something that since Ryan and I have joined the podcast, the numbers have soared. It's quite interesting. I'm not saying there's any real reason behind it.
I don't know why that is.
Yeah, no, neither do I.
We just wanted to say, Brian, you can be our wingman anytime.
Brian, having a look at, I can't tell you how many businesses I've started and how many businesses have failed. I've lost count completely. But every time you start a business or you do something, the fear and how scared you are is unbelievable. It overwhelms you at times. And even though we're doing this podcast and we what are we, episode 8 now, 9 now, 8, we still will have a challenge. Okay, what content? What do we bring to everyone? How do we change it up so that people say, hell, you know what, I want to listen to these guys. Maybe they like it that we're real. Maybe we've got positive news.
I thought that from now on we were just going to wing it.
Well, clearly we're winging it.
Huh?
Well,
clearly. That's what you do in business. You wing it. Richard Branson says, say yes to everything and figure out how to do it later.
Exactly.
And that's what you got to do.
I think the key is if you're doing it with passion behind you, it's a total different story.
You have to.
If you're doing something that is you're doing it because you feel you have to do it or to earn income, it's probably not going to work. We're not really doing this to earn income right now, are we? We're doing it more. There's an underlying passion from it, and there's a desire to do something good and to give something back. We spoke about at the beginning of the show. Why are we using the hashtag support aviation? What does that hashtag mean? Ryan, you brought it up.
I did. I know. I was actually lying awake last night thinking about it. Something we need to touch on. I mean, we've spoken about in the last couple of weeks where, like, guys, get out there, start something, become an entrepreneur. It is easier said than done. I mean, I've been speaking to a very good close friend of mine, Gavin, recently. Also he's struggling with ideas, trying to get out there. And I said to him the other day, look, try this. Let's go down this avenue. I'll walk with you, and let's see how it goes. Like you said, now, I think by us backing up the support aviation hashtag, it's not necessarily financial support, but it's that back your buddy support. Which you and I know very well.
Makes people aware as well that
exactly.
the aviation industry is in this
tight.
massive crisis. We're aware of it, we're in it.
Yeah.
But the reality is a lot of people out there don't quite realize that aviation and the hospitality industry, travel, all sort of linked in a very, very dire state. We said it at the beginning, it's going to recover. This is not about things are never going to go back or never going to improve. This is about either bridging the gap between where you can start flying again, or actually maybe taking it as an opportunity, like we've said a couple of times, to say, right, this is what I've wanted to do all my life, and now what better time to do it during this crisis? I'm going to start something, I'm going to run with it, and let's see where it goes. There's no time like now.
It's exactly that. It's what I was trying to say is you might find a complete new passion through whatever you start, and there's no such thing as a bad idea right now. And through the whole support aviation thing, I think it means, for instance, take Pete, for example, who's very kindly
thanks Pete. Pete the Greek, Pete Ellis, flying for Fly Sapphire. Thanks for the mask. They are fantastic mask.
I have to say that's the best mask I've had.
That's the only mask that I've put on where it doesn't expand the diameter of my face.
You
by
don't look
50%.
like a chipmunk.
Exactly.
Oh.
Awesome mask.
I dig it because it makes me look even more chiseled.
Nah, put it on again there. I'm not so
show you,
sure.
man. Look at this, man. This is chiseled as I'm going to
You
get.
do look, actually. Anyway, I'll leave.
You actually look nice and pink like the last YouTube
Pete,
video.
why did you choose the red one? I'll leave Pete's details in the show notes if you want to get hold of them. They're really, really nice masks, nice form-fitting masks. Guys, it's one of these things. We trying to push out content, positive content, and that it's kind of the show. Started off Aviation Base, and of course it is Aviation Base. It always will be, but it's taken on a new dimension for us, and that it's there's a motivational aspect to it. Get out there, do something, and it's not just about being an entrepreneur. Some people are not interested in being an entrepreneur,
No.
but again, there are skills that over the years you have developed as an airline captain, airline pilot, airline first officer, whatever it might be, that you can utilize in other industry.
Exactly.
Brett, let's face it, there are things pilots deal with that other industry don't. On the other hand, this has kind of also brought pilots down to size in a certain aspect, because it makes you realize, okay, wow, your direction was so narrow towards flying an aircraft that now when you actually have to look somewhere else, you actually have to take the little specifics and break them up and try and say, right, I'm good at that. My dad used to say to me all the time, you'll fly with captains that some of them are fantastic dealing with the passengers, but they got terrible hands. And they do terrible paperwork, and they're not good in other areas. Some guys know the law absolutely backwards, but they almost flatten the landing gear every time you land the aircraft. You've got to take little bits from all those guys to make your own way. When I started the show originally, without you guys, by the way,
What was it called then?
it was the same name,
I haven't heard from it. I haven't heard of it at all.
But
Okay.
the point of starting that season was, I believe I had a added advantage to other guys that we were flying with, Ryan, because my dad was is an aviator. He had his own charter airline, And when I was at home as a youngster, I heard about flying all the time. So there was this inherent sort of grounding that when I started flying bigger aircraft, I felt I had an advantage. And the point of the show was to say, right, let's impart some knowledge here. Let's impart some of those stories I heard when I was a youngster. Let's sort of give something back in that regard. When this COVID crisis came along, things changed. We had to adapt. We had to have a nice term I like, ever-changing forms of insight. In other words, what do we have to do to adapt our show to keep giving to keep sending the right message, and also to be in line with the times? And obviously that's where you guys have come along. Now it's taken on a totally new form, which is absolutely fantastic, and we're having so much fun doing it. And the fact that we're having so much fun doing it makes me realize that this is the right thing to do. We look forward to this show. I mean,
and you spoke earlier on, and I agree with you. You spoke earlier on about you got a passion, go and find something. People often say, well, I do pottery, I can't do anything with it. I like taking photographs, I can't do anything with it.
Of course you can.
You might not be able to do, there might be 1 billion photographers out there, but you don't know what following your passion or the thing that drives you, that you love doing, can lead to. And we're seeing that now. We're seeing a huge amount of interest in other areas, which we would never have thought about. So you can't discount saying, I don't know where I am now, let me just go and do something.
Specific knowledge. All of us have some form of specific knowledge.
Yeah, everyone's got a key within them.
Brett, what you just said, someone that's in that sort of space, go download the Gary Vee podcast. Listen to what he has to say. He's basically, pushes the point that if you've got something, no matter what it is, if it's taking photos, if it's making pottery, making bread, there's a market there. And if you're the best at it, there's a massive market. If you're the best at what you do, then there's a massive market. And if you do the right thing, the chances are you probably will be the best at it, because we all know, if you're doing something and you are competing with guys like us that aren't doing this for any other reason other than this is our absolute passion, this is what we want to do, and we're going to keep doing it. Very difficult to compete with people like that if you're doing it and it's a hassle. If it's like, I've got to go and do the show, I've got to prepare for it, I've got to... You know what it's like doing a type rating. If you're not committed to that type rating, if you don't say, right, for the next 2 weeks, I'm cancelling all dinner reservations, I'm sitting inside and I'm going to learn this aircraft backwards, you're going to have a difficult type rating.
You have to. It's another thing that I think is an add-on to that as well is you need to break through your fear of the unknown, the fear of starting something, the fear of failing. My dad always used to say to me when I was growing up as well, is you have nothing to fear but fear itself. And it's kind of been in the back of my head quite a lot lately, is you got to sort of abandon those fears and just go for it.
How that fear changes. When we did our first podcast, all three of us didn't sleep the night before out of fear. What are we going to say? What are we going to look like? What are we going to sound like? Now, the three of us don't sleep the night before, but it's out of excitement. What can we bring to the table?
Your brain is busy trying to...
And it's got nothing to fear. Fear disappears. It's just about how can we make this better? How can we have fun? What can we do with it? So it's important. But has he not got verbal diarrhea today? He's
talking too much.
You're talking a hell of a lot.
I don't know, the lines on the screen here show that
I'm the line on my screen indicates I'm dead.
Dominated as usual.
I'd like to, look, I'm going to talk a little bit more if that's okay.
Are we going to introduce ourselves? We're starting the podcast.
First thing, we didn't even say hello this morning.
No, it was a good place to start, so I started. That's the advantage of having a show called Brian Air. You get to choose when to start. But guys, I'd like to mention a couple of people that have played an important role in our development so far. Not only our development, but a support base. You need a support base to keep going. You need a few people to actually say, I like what you guys are doing, you're on the right path, try this and try that. And there's been a couple of people along the way. Starting off, Bronwyn Wheel, met on LinkedIn, a social media coach. Every time I post something, she supports, she offers a bit of advice, she shares our stuff. You know, something like that helps us a lot. Last week, Craig Wood gave me a call from Aviation for SA. They got a fantastic app, well worth a download. But he gave us a call to say, hey, like what we're doing. I'd like to have him on at some stage. He's keen to come on. But there's like this support like that makes you know that, you know, if you're influencing one person's day positively, then we kind of doing our job.
Yep.
Alex McPhail from SAA, he's got his own YouTube channel as well. He's offered very good advice to me personally on the branding side. Alex as well always sort of likes our stuff, and his YouTube channel, if you're a passionate aviator, definitely worth a subscribe. We mentioned Pete earlier with the masks. He made a few masks for us, and he wants to give something back. We want to get him involved with us in some way as well. But all those little things really help us to keep moving forward, and they help us to know that, you know, like I said, if we're influencing one person, it's doing our job. Martin Stork as well, the guys from Cockpit Coaches, always sharing our stuff, liking our stuff, and offering us content as well. Because let's face it, we read stuff, we look at stuff, and it becomes content for the week's show. We need it.
Yeah, for sure. Just from my side, Samira has been brilliant. They've given us the opportunity to record here, use the facility.
You mean to have the beautiful airport in the background?
The beautiful airport in the background, but that's what they do. That's what Samira is all about. They make it. They make life an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, they've given us a platform to actually do this, and it's been it's not easy. We've got a nice little studio. We've got everything set up. So many thanks to Samira for all the support.
I think from my side as well, I'd just have to give a shout out and a big thank you to our friends, our families, and obviously our followers that we have so far.
Because at the beginning we were a bit miserable as well. We needed those people to pick us up.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, without that support, you know, who knows where we would be. But yeah, a big thank you in general. And let's just keep it going, boys.
Yeah, well, I'd always, any of our listeners who want to give us input, because that is critical for us, because that helps us, directs us. We know what you guys are going through, what you're thinking, and if we can do something or change something or discuss something, just subscribe to our YouTube channel, send us a message, and let's see what we can do.
And that even goes for being on the show. I mean, if there's a few people out there that feel they can add some value, or there's an opinion or a point they'd like to get across, as long as it's in line with our sort of passion of positivity and high motivation, striving for good in the world, then we'd absolutely like to have you on. I just want to apologize to Joe Rogan. I can't make it to...
Did you turn him down? I cannot.
The borders are closed, Brett. I can't make it. Joe, I'll be on in a couple of weeks. And
I'm sure Joe will understand.
I'll delay.
He'll have a
Sim Ferris sort of left me a voice note yesterday as well, so I don't know what he had to say.
Gary V sent me a WhatsApp, says his Brian character keeps bugging me. I'm like, don't worry, just entertain him.
Well, we've spoken. We decided that the show this week, or
what is it called?
Ryan decided.
Ryan decided.
What was the name of the show this week?
Just Wing It.
Just Wing It. Well, Just Wing It came, and this is the show this week. I'd like to end off with a little quote I saw on LinkedIn yesterday by Herman Hesse. Actually wrote the quote, but Lex Friedman put it on his account. It says, "Words do not express thoughts very well. They always become a little different immediately after they are expressed. A little distorted, a little foolish." Grant us that little privilege of knowing that our thoughts and our passions and everything there are good-willed and positive and motivational. They're meant to be. when you put them into words, it's not always that easy to get that point across. But thanks again for all your support, all your love, and all your passion you guys are giving us. You're keeping us going, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Subscribe. See you soon. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Lekker boys.
Well, that's all for this week, folks. Thanks for listening and for your continued support. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and pass the show on to your friends, your families, and your colleagues. If you'd like to get in touch with us, my email address is in the show details. Stay positive, keep the passion alive, and we'll see you next week. Cheers for now.